fellow councillors, colleagues of all colours and none, good morning, and I thank each and every one of you for joining me today as we come together in unity, in solidarity, in one voice, in our demonstration of collective approach and stance against racism, injustice and inequality, by showing racism the red card, and once again on behalf of far too many victims, I thank you all. Racism should not have any place in our society. However, the opposite is the truth. The brutal reality, racism and acts of racism still exists within our communities, as does the practice of injustice and inequality. And none of us should tolerate this, and hell, we should not be part of this. For far too long, people like me have suffered far too much verbal abuse, physical attacks and assaults, and experienced injustice and inequalities, and lost our dearest, nearest and loved ones. When will I? When could I? When should I? And the far too many of us say enough is enough. I know that should not even be a question. Racism is the biggest act of terrorism, a form of terrorism which has haunted and terrorized communities, divided communities and nations, created us and them amongst us, deprived and stripped of the basic human rights and liberties for the many of us, alienated, ostracized us, prevented the many, hundreds of thousands and millions of us from living a life as fellow human beings with equal access, equal and simple human rights. And for centuries and decades destroyed far too many of our lives and literally killed far too many of us in their individual and collective act of terrorism, and this terrorism must stop now. My brothers and sisters, we are the sons and daughters of one creator and one race, that is the human race. Our skin color, our religious belief, practice or none, our gender, our sexuality and our ability or disability should not, and it must not, be the reason for anyone or a group of people to marginalize, criminalize, penalize, victimize, hurt and harm us. Today, our society, our community, our cities, towns and country are a lot better, respectful and non-racist place than it has been for far too long, and that is because we all have contributed in so many ways to challenge such unacceptable behaviors, and our collective actions from today onwards will dictate and determine how long more it will take for our minds, our actions, our institutions to challenge the deep-rooted inequality, for us to prevent unacceptable actions of injustice and to eradicate racism. And with this pledge, I declare that here at Newcastle we will hold annual event titled United Against Racism, Injustice and Inequality, a day of action, when we will invite the region's MPs, PCCs, mayors and other decision makers to come together in solidarity, in unity, to make a renewed collective pledge to fight racism, injustice and inequality. And this will take place on the day of Wear Red Day National Campaign, which next year will be Friday 21st of October 2022. In the month of Black History Month and a week from National Hate Crime Awareness Week, we ought to continue to make this pledge until we win the fight against racism. I want our region to stand up and show that there is no place for racism within our communities, and encourage people to instead to promote equality, tolerance and respect towards one another. My message to the victims: I am sorry. We are sorry. We are sorry that you had to suffer the humiliation, the victimization, the hurt, the pain, and some of your gravest losses of loved ones. I am sorry. We are sorry. We pledge our support to you. We pledge to continue to support you all the way to receive the fair and right justice, and we pledge to protect you from further racial victimization, injustice and inequality. My message to the perpetrators: you are the minority of evils that surface in our terraces, our towns, our cities and our country. Terrorists like you have no place in humanity and within our community. I reach out to those amongst you who are willing to learn. I reach out to you, open to be educated, willing to change your ill-held behaviors which you may have picked up and learned from others, to come forward, to be educated, for you to change your ill-held views and make yourself a better person. And to those racists and terrorists, you will be defeated. You will be dealt with and punished according to your unlawful criminal acts of racism of all its ugly forms. Finally, let me remind all decision makers, law enforcers, lawmakers, organizations and institutions and leaders to lead by example, uphold laws of the land, uphold all human rights laws and practice equality at each and every steps of your acts and actions. Challenge and change practices and policies, putting equality for all at the heart of it. Once again, I thank you all for your show of solidarity, and I remind you all, and I quote Angela Davis: in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist.